Thank you so much, Pierre, and to the whole team for this warm welcome to Malta. I've never been here before, and it's delightful to be here. I've just made one mistake, which was I was listening to Crowded House the other day. You know, they sing that song, Everywhere You Go, wherever you take the weather. Big mistake. I'm sorry. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. I came from London, and it's just the echo. I really appreciate this opportunity to tell you a little bit about my experience at Shazam at the early days, as well as some of the lessons learned. I wish I could tell you something intelligent, which is why I called it Practical Insights, but really it's just a set of stories, and hopefully you can take something from it in your experience in your work as well. Let me quickly ask, does anyone know what that number is, 2580? Anyone know what 2580 is or was? What it stands for? OK, fantastic. That means you're not old like me. That's brilliant. Now, somewhere in here, I should be able to tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm from India originally. My father used to work for Air India. And so I grew up a little bit all over the world. I lived in Greece, in France, in Switzerland, in Singapore, in Japan. But I went to university in the United States, to Dartmouth College, and later at Stanford Business School in Silicon Valley, which is where I did my MBA. I was there, and it's too late now to hide my age, unfortunately, from 95 to 97, which was when the internet was starting up. It was the early days of this promise of this new technology which would change the world. And I, being right in the heart of Silicon Valley, thought, that's a good idea. I'm going to jump on that bandwagon. And that's how I became an entrepreneur. Now, I didn't do it by myself, because these were my partners in crime. This is a pretty motley crew. I know you're thinking that. And I hope that none of them are actually watching this talk afterwards, because the reality is that the guy sitting next to me, Chris Barton, he was my drinking buddy. This was in 98, 99. And the world was changing with the possibilities of this new technology. And everyone wanted to be an entrepreneur. So we said, let's be entrepreneurs. It sounded like a fun thing to do. We didn't have any ideas, unfortunately, to get started. So we used to drink beers and try to come up with ideas. And most of them were terrible and got worse and worse the more we drank. The one thing is that we'd be in like pubs, for instance, and we'd hear music playing, and Chris would say, hey, what's that song? And I'd say, I don't know, you tell me. But none of us knew. And this was the amazing insight which helped Chris come up with the idea for Shazam. So he thought, what if you could connect with all the radio stations in the country, and if you knew what time you were listening to that song, you'd be able to find out the name of that song and the artist, and the world would be a better place. Chris was doing his MBA at Berkeley Business School at the time, and he was taking some courses where his strategy professor said to him, think about what would put your idea out of business. And he thought, what would put my idea out of business would be if you could use your mobile phone to identify any music, not just what was being played on the radio. That would be even better. And so that's how he came up with the idea for Shazam. Now, I should say for the record that Chris had a number of terrible ideas, none of which are talked about at conferences. But this one was the first good one that he had come up with. Now, I try to think of myself as a practical person. My wife disagrees, but that's by the way. I said, OK, let me ask you a few questions here, Chris. So, where do we get the technology? He said, oh, we'll just invent it. Now, I don't know if you have any experience with MBA students, but they typically don't invent technology. So this is not a good team to start with, right? I said, all right, how are we going to find all the music in the world that you want to identify? He said, not a problem. We'll talk to the record companies. I'm sure they can help us out. Now, it just so happened that I was working as a consultant in this new internet age with a small consultancy, and one of our clients was Universal Music. And I knew perfectly well that back in 1999, they did not have a database of all the music on the planet. I said, all right, let's not get stuck on details here. So, what's the business model? He said, that's easy. anytime people identify a song, we'll sell them a CD and we'll make loads of money. I was like, "Oh, Chris, have you heard of something called Napster, where people are downloading music for free? We don't have a business model." He said, "Yes, but we have a secret weapon." I said, "Who?" He said, "My business partner is a guy called Philippe. He and I have worked together at Berkeley Business School, and he has unbelievable powers of making things happen." And that's Philippe right there. I'd never met him when we started this business together. My degree is in mathematical economics, so I love spreadsheets. So I took a little spreadsheet and I said, OK, chances of inventing this new technology, make up a number. 15%. OK. Chances of finding all the music that we need, make up another number. 40%. Chances of finding a sensible business model, that must be easier. Make it 50%. So I multiplied the whole thing through. Bing, what I got was 4% chance that this business would work. So I quit my job and became an entrepreneur. Sorry, this is probably the wrong audience. Yeah, not very good with odds. Now, you're thinking, how did you guys get here? Because this is not a sensible career move. Now, it just so happened that we were lucky. We were lucky because we were so clueless about the technology, we didn't even know what domain of science it was, let alone being close to solving it. It turns out it is digital signal processing, and the experts of digital signal processing happen to be at Stanford and Berkeley. So my clever business partners happened to be in the right place at the right time, and they started emailing experts saying, "Hey, we're looking for an inventor. Can you help?" And the problem they described was as follows. We're trying to invent this new service where you can use your mobile phone to listen to 15 seconds of music, wherever that is. It could be in a cafe, in a bar, in a club, with background noise, over the handset of a mobile device, which is not great at the best of times, over the mobile network, which creates distortion, matching against a million songs as quickly as possible so the user can get a response and we can make money and become successful. What do you think? And so the experts are like, "You guys are nuts. What are you doing? Stick to your day job." But one thing, to my business partner's credit, is they don't like to take no for an answer. So they're like, "OK, that expert is obviously not so expert. Let's find another one." And they went to the head of Stanford's Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics, a professor called Dr. Julia Smith. And they said to Professor Smith, they said, "Look, we're having a hard time inventing this thing. Can't be that hard, surely. Who are the best PhD students you've ever had?" And Professor Smith said, "Look, over the last 25 years, here's a list of names." And the number one name on that list was Dr. Avery Wang. Now, Avery Wang is sitting between Philippe and Chris, smiling because he's on camera. But I assure you, he was not smiling when we got him to sign up as our fourth co-founder. In fact, he didn't know what hit him. He just got this email out of the blue saying, "Hey, we're looking for an inventor. Can you help?" So he just hit delete. My business partners, who just don't know how to take no for an answer, never gave up. They said, "OK, no problem." So they emailed Professor Smith, who sent an email to Avery, who said, "Oh, all right, fine, I'll meet you guys. What do you want?" And they explained the problem to him. And Avery thought to himself, this is an interesting challenge. And that was a mistake, because before he knew what was happening, he was in this mugshot with the rest of us, MBAs, wannabe entrepreneurs. There's a term for that. It's called wantrepreneur. Trying to invent this technology, we said, "Look, we need to get on with it because time's ticking. We want to be successful as quick as possible. You've got 3 months to invent this groundbreaking technology. Off you go." So he sat in his favorite cafe in Palo Alto trying to invent. Now, because I've never invented anything, I don't actually know what that involves, other than, I guess, drinking lots of coffee. But nothing was happening. It took him 2.5 months out of the 3 months, and he's like, "I can't invent this thing. What do I do?" And Chris would call him every day. "So have you invented it yet? Have you invented it yet?" And he's like, "No, I haven't. Because there's a whole bunch of problems, And so he was rehearsing how to tell Chris, I can't invent it. Stop running around, like meeting investors and writing business plans and doing spreadsheets and all these MBA things, okay? It's not working. We don't have the technology. And then he had a breakthrough. And the breakthrough was this. I wish I could explain it. What was the breakthrough? The breakthrough was, if you look at the spectral peaks of the song and match it against this database, you get this diagonal line which appears when there's a match in the time. You guys following what I'm saying? No, I didn't think this was working. Look, I chatted with Avery a couple of months ago to try to get him to explain it to me, and I thought I'd understood it, but I haven't. Let me do this instead. If we can just bear with me. Okay, so this is Philippe and Chris and I are running around in London with our mobiles, looking really silly, like standing up, taking recordings in pubs and things, and sending them to Avery to see if he could invent the technology. If we can just play the first sound file, that'd be great, so you can hear what the music sounds like. What's that song? Anyone know that song? Anyone know that song? Never Ending Story. We have a winner. Yes, Never Ending Story it is. Never Ending Story? Okay, now, this is what Avery, sitting in his basement in Palo Alto, trying to invent, was hearing. Can we play the second clip, please? Anyone? Any guesses? Any guesses? The gentleman in the front row? It's Never Ending Story. That's right. Could you hear those fragments of music? No wonder he was having such a hard time inventing this thing, you know. But finally, he got there, and we had a prototype which we could then take to investors and spin them these wild stories about this business we were going to build. And we managed to get $1 million in angel funding. This was the summer of 2000. And we were so excited. So we went straight away and hired a crack team, as you can see here. I don't know why they're standing on a desk, but I don't know what they're doing on this desk, really. This Christian on the right was my old flatmate. Mike in the middle was a guy I used to work with. That's Mikhala, my cousin. Yeah, so, you know, it was not a deeply thought-through plan of attack. But for those of you who've been paying attention, remember I said that we didn't have the database for music? I was right. We didn't have the database for music. We talked to the record companies. They said, get lost. So we literally had to create it from scratch. And this is where Philippe, bless him, with his incredible superpowers of making stuff happen out of thin air, he's like, I know what. So he did a deal with a distributor of music in the UK who happened to have every single CD in their warehouse. He said, look, let's do this. We'll create some fingerprints, which Shazam uses. We'll type in all the information about the name of the song, the artist, the album, etc. We'll put the CD back in the case, put it back on your shelf, but we won't pay you. What do you think? They're like, yes, that metadata has value. Go. So at one point, we were camped out in this warehouse on the outskirts of London. We hired teams of people to literally sit down, grab CDs, create fingerprints, type in the information. It got so out of control, we obviously were way in over our heads. We had to hire a US Marine called Bart to take control. And we were running 3 shifts a day, madly creating this library of fingerprints so we could get on with it. Now, I did a talk once which was called Don't Try This at Home. The feedback I got was that's not a good title. But honestly, I mean, if you're thinking of starting a business, this is not the way to go about it. We were lucky. We were lucky we got away with it. But we didn't get the memo which said that the internet bubble would burst. And this was around the end of 2000. The stock market, which had gone all the way up, fell by about 70%. And when we launched, the other thing which I'd come up with, I don't want to sound like a negative person, but having a business model, really handy. Because we didn't have one, we were just burning cash. And if you burn cash long enough, there's only one thing which is going to happen, and that's bankruptcy. And, you know, I like to be lighthearted. I like to have a sense of humor about things. But I would have a proper sense of humor failure if they lock me up. Because if you're a director of a company which is trading insolvent, that's what they do. So it got so bad that we actually had to let go some of the really early people, really close friends who sat with us in those little rooms early on when it was just a promise and a dream and nothing more than that. We were on the brink of bankruptcy for a long time, to the point where our crown jewel, which was the technology which Avery had developed, we actually had to sell it to a third party just to raise enough money to stay alive. And this is what one doesn't hear in stories from entrepreneurs or about new businesses and new technology, which is it's hard work. It takes patience. That not saying no, which I'm talking about, we had to do that sort of every single day just to stay alive through that time. And I'm glad to be here to tell you the story, and this is one which I share with every entrepreneur and anybody who's trying to do something new and taking those knockbacks, which is it's not easy. One needs to get through it. And what changed for us was in 2007 when the iPhone launched, or more specifically in 2008 when the App Store launched, and Shazam became an app. And then suddenly, it found the right platform. Suddenly, it wasn't a clunky phone number you had to dial and a voice call to an IVR system, and you get a text message with the name of the song and the artist. Does anyone know what I'm even talking about? No, you don't, because you didn't know what 2580 was. 2580 is the 4 numbers straight down the middle of your mobile, which is what you dial to access Shazam, you youngsters. So, the good news is, the reason I'm wasting 45 minutes of your life right here, right now, is because we live to tell the tale. In the first 10 years of our existence, it took us 10 years before Shazam was used 1 billion times. And we're like, wow, 1 billion. The next billion took a year. The next billion after that took 2 months. So we found the experience. We found the platform. We found something which people didn't forget about and could tell their friends about. And I'm delighted to say that after all that, late 2017 and then in 2018, we had an offer to buy the company by Apple, which was fantastic because Apple and Shazam had known each other for many years, and it feels like a perfect fit as part of an overall musical experience. So I'm delighted to say I'm a recovering entrepreneur, no longer an entrepreneur. But I still have a ton of empathy for those who are trying to innovate, trying to come up with new products, trying to do the right thing. And for us, and this is just a story, our cornerstones really were quality, trying to focus on the quality of the product and the experience, and the persistence which I talked about, which is not giving up, just hanging in there. But it also made a big difference that we enjoyed working together and our skills complemented each other. And you want to, if you're spending a lot of time, you want to work with people who know how to have fun. This is Klaus. What is he doing in that bottom right picture? I don't know. But that was the DNA of our business. I wanted to share with you a little bit about some of the kind of like insights which came out of it. But before I do that, why don't you take a minute, turn to the person next to you, say hello, introduce yourself, and talk about one site, one product, one app which you really like. Go on, take a minute. Yeah, introduce yourself. Don't be formal, okay? Come on. One service, one product which you love. What's going on? Come on, talk to each other. You two, what are you guys doing? Talk to each other. Nothing. Come on, guys. Come on. I can see you. All right. Had a chat, broke the ice. OK. Let me tell you what we were trying to achieve. OK, this is what we wanted. We wanted something which addressed a deep customer need. This nagging, what is that song? It's really annoying me. What is that song? With a beautifully simple solution, which created like a really delightful, almost magical experience. That's one of my favorite words, by the way, when people say, oh, it's almost a little bit like magic. But didn't get there right away. It was an incredibly clunky and frustrating experience for many, many years. So we had a number of challenges when we started out. The first one was getting customers. Now, this is how we started off with our marketing, which is 2580, use Shazam to identify any track. Go. Get it? Get it? People didn't get it. They're like, what? So you realize that you've got to take it step by step. Build awareness. What is this thing you're talking about? You can identify music using your mobile phone? Yes. How do you do it? 2580, straight down the middle of your mobile. Really? What happens next? You get a text message with the name of the song and the artist. You're like, oh, OK. It just takes a while when you're launching something new for people to get the hang of it. And people would say to me, they're like, oh, it's a good idea. You should market it. I'm like, I am marketing it. I am marketing it. You're just not paying attention. We tried so many different things. We tried low-budget TV ads. We tried SMS campaigns. We tried print. We tried PR. We tried these posters, which I still have in my house. And, I still don't know if these worked or not. But the one thing which eventually we found worked best was this. It was radio ads. So what we did was, we did an ad which said, there's a new service in the UK where you can use your mobile to identify music by dialing this number. Try it on the next song now. And the song would come on. We'd make sure it was in the database. And it would work. And that's how we started getting users. So what's the secret? Trial and error. You don't necessarily get it right the first time. Sorry, I shouldn't say. We kept getting it wrong, but trial and error eventually found the mechanic to get the word out. The second problem was keeping customers. So the typical profile would be people come in, try it a few times, and then get on with the rest of their lives and stop using the service. We're like, but why? Why is that? And I used to actually have these conversations. People would say, what's the number again? I'm like, hey, look, I can't make this easier for you. Straight down the middle of the mobile, you get it 2580, and they'd forget the number. Like, how hard is this? We worked so hard. We were the only service in the UK which had a 4-digit code, which was the same across all the operators, specifically so people wouldn't forget it, and they did. Like, how are you going to find out the name of that song if you forget the number? But they did. And so human beings are not tuned to listening to your marketing or your retention message. It's just one of those things which, over time, becomes a habit, becomes something which you enjoy, something which is top of mind. And so in our case, it really was when the user experience became fluid and easy that people remembered us. I remember once I showed my mother. My mother, by the way, is proud of me. But she didn't know what this Shazam thing really was. And I was like, can I show you? And I pulled it up, I loaded it on her phone, and she hit the button, and it worked. She's like, that's easy. I'm like, yes, my mom loves it too. She finds it easy to use. That was the moment when it became an app that our users remembered. Thank goodness. The third one was satisfying customers. And this is one of the early kind of like roadmaps from 2000 that we worked on. And so you have this question, what song is that? And, oh, we had this great track. It was Kernkraft 400 by Zombie Nation. It had a really catchy tune, but no one could name that song. It was great. But what do you want to do next? So it could buy the music. It could be learning more, so listen to a clip, find similar music. You could tell friends about it. You could get notified. And we used to have these debates. So for me, the biggest thing about identifying a song and the artist is, what should I listen to next? Music discovery. What sounds like that? Chris is like, no, I just want to buy the track and that's it. My cousin Mikhala was like, no, you guys don't get it. It's about telling your friends. You share the music. And we had a product manager later on as well who was convinced it was all about the content. Who's right? Who's right? Sorry? Oh, yeah. The user's right. The user is always right. It's no point sitting in a room debating, arm wrestling over features when you can just get that feedback from the user. And this took us a while. Nowadays, you've got fancy words. You can say, we iterated. We just kept messing up and trying new things until we found the things which worked for users. So this is what I wanted to try to kind of reflect on a little bit, which is, what are some of the techniques you can use, I guess, if you're kind of building your new product? This is way too fancy, but I'll give it a go. So the first, I think, is putting yourself in your customer's shoes. And part of it is not seeing the world from your perspective. How do we get more users? We need more revenue. What I'm after is loyalty. No. Think of it from your customer's perspective. What is the pain that they're feeling, which sometimes they can't even express? How are they trying to spend their time? What gives them satisfaction? What does a song really mean? Like, my son Max, who's 9 years old, plays Stairway to Heaven on his new electric guitar over and over again. My apologies to our neighbors, by the way, formally. But what is it that gets in somebody's head and makes them passionate? And that's about putting yourself in your customer's shoes. So I used to do things like, I went to music festivals to really understand, how does that work? How do you get involved, so engrossed in the music? What do you do what is that song doing to you? And it's left me with a bad addiction to dance music now. But anyway, I can't say it's for research purposes anymore when I try to go to a festival, which is sad. But the next one is experimenting with new technology. Because technology, as we know, doesn't stand still. There's no respect for tradition. That great quote from Satya. It's all about innovation. So what are the new technologies? What are the new experiences? And there's no point reading a report about it. I think the best way to do it is to experience it oneself, is to play with things. Try it out. What's it like when you have your first virtual reality experience, for instance? What's it like when you chat with a bot? Do you know they're a bot? Or do you not know they're a bot? In this particular case with Snapchat. So Snapchat is impenetrable to old people like me. I'm like, I can't figure this thing out. I had to ask my niece, who was 16 at the time. She very slowly talked me through it. Now, Shazam, some of you might know, if you say, hey, Siri, what's that song? It's Shazam which is powering it on the back end. If any of you are Snapchat users, if you hold, you can Shazam from inside Snapchat. And I'm expecting that we'll continue to see some of those kind of technologies and abilities in the future as well. The third, for me, is about just using the data. And by using the data, in our early days, we were trying really hard to make money, one way or the other. And we came up with this idea of selling ringtones. Now, ringtones, back in 2001, for those of you who like reading history books, was a big thing. And we had the service where each week you could buy the ringtone, which was the #1 song on Shazam. And people did. We sold loads of ringtones. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever, but who am I to argue with revenues coming in? So we kept doing ringtones. Now, as Shazam kind of grew, the data is incredibly rich about what songs, which places, which artists are breaking through, which genres are emerging. And that's something which the music industry, historically, was not a data-driven business. And it got to the point where, this is really bizarre, we were not trying to change the music industry. We were just trying to have a good time and be entrepreneurs. But there was an article in The Atlantic magazine which talked about the Shazam effect. And it went from, the music industry had what's called A&R, artists and recording. So people, music geeks who would go to pubs and listen to new bands and go, we should sign them up. They're really good. And it comes down to individual taste. Now, with the data that comes from Shazam, you can say, you know what? You can tell which bands are going to break through just because of those spikes in usage. And in fact, there was an artist, Demi Lovato, who scheduled concerts based on where the data was showing that she was popular. So what happened is that it started turning the industry on its head. I worked, by the way, I should say a couple of things. So I left Shazam after a few years, along with some of my business partners, because I wanted to do something which gave back. So I went to work for Save the Children. I continued as a director of the company, and then later as an observer on the board for many, many years. And we were lucky because once the iPhone launched and we managed to get some traction, we were able to buy back the technology, which we had to sell during the darkest days. So the story has a happy ending. But the data itself became valuable to the point that I worked for a media company which ran a bunch of radio stations. The radio programming director would use the Shazam data to be able to decide what songs to play. And in fact, the data was so powerful that 3 weeks ahead of a song being released, if the data shows that it's being Shazammed, you could be sure it was going to be a hit. So this is the predictive power which comes from the user behavior. And I'm a big geek. I'm a big believer in data. So let me pause here before telling you more. If you can take a minute, talk to somebody else, not the same person you talked to before. What's one thing that's stuck in your mind from these rambling stories? One takeaway. Go. You've got a couple of minutes. One thing. It's not asking much. Come on. Don't look blankly at me. OK. Fantastic. Thank you. That makes me feel good. At least you were talking to each other. There wasn't a stony silence sitting there going, why are we listening to this old guy tell us about stuff which really doesn't matter? I really appreciate it. Now, for me, as I was saying, as a recovering entrepreneur, most recently I was head of innovation at Virgin Money, which is part of the Virgin Group. And the Virgin Group has an ethos, which is changing business for good, which really aligned with my personal values. I wanted to do something which gives back, which has a positive impact. And from my time at Save the Children, I learned a lot about the power of young people. And as Pierre mentioned in the introduction, I like working with Generation Z, so people who were born in 1995 and later, who have a completely different outlook. When I was an entrepreneur in 99, the idea was build a business as quickly as possible, sell it for a load of money, and live the dream. Now, obviously, it didn't work out for us, but never mind. Nowadays, there's more to it than that. It's about sustainability. It's about tackling global problems. It's about having a legacy which lives on beyond, the sort of like here and now. And those are themes which I think we can all resonate with. So what I try to do is I invest in startups, technology startups, which are looking beyond the obvious, which are looking over the horizon and trying to tackle some of these big problems. And they have the same challenges we do. They need to find the right team. They need to get energized because people say, no, no, no. They need to have that persistence, get through the hard times. Are we going to have to lay off some of our best friends, or can we make it through? And being able to share these old stories and experiences, I find is a comfort. So I learned so much about the industry today, just sitting in this room and hearing the other speakers and laughing at some of the anecdotes. And that's my thought, which I would leave you with, I guess, which is, for yourself, find the thing which you are passionate about and bring that to work. And the same thing when you put yourself in your customer's shoes. What are the things which they really care about, and how can we make the world a better place? So, on that note, I'm just going to thank you all for your indulgence and your hospitality. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Thank you. Thanks. Well done.
Thank you so much, Raj. Thank you so much. You can take it back.